time to go on YouTube, but I'll do quick check and then we will start. Okay. Uh, okay. So we are live on YouTube and we are live on LinkedIn as well. Perfect. Cool. Hello, everyone. Uh, First of all, Happy New Year and welcome to our stream, Chai Cloud, third episode, which is SRE. I'm Suraj Narwade, and I'm a platform engineer here in UK, and I run this channel Suraj in Cloud, where I post videos about DevOps, cloud native stuff. And we have Aditya with us. Aditya, please introduce yourself.
Hey folks, Happy New Year. I'm Aditya. I'm an SRE manager currently based in Berlin, and I'm always curious about new topics. So, doing the stream with Suraj. Yeah, excited
Yeah,
for this.
perfect. So those who are joining new and haven't seen our previous uh, series of our Chai in Cloud, do check out our previous two episodes, which were on our career journey, and the second one was on DevOps. And on top of that foundation, our third episode is about SRE, right? So we'll discuss what is SRE, what is it about, how it is different from DevOps, which we discussed in the last stream. And if you have any questions, do let us know in the chat, whether you're from LinkedIn or you're from watching from YouTube. Perfectly fine. Just let us know in the comment and we'll address, right? And also, the stream will be recorded and it will be available on YouTube and LinkedIn both, so you can watch later as well. And if you want to reach out to us, our links are in the description. You can reach out to us on Twitter or LinkedIn. So yeah, that's more about it. And I would like to do one thing, one new thing in the stream is, like, if you're watching this video, do let us know in the comment, like, obviously we can see your name, but like what you do and where are you from. Let's see.
Always so nice to see people from around the world and get the backgrounds. And it's a small world, so many of the people joining are. I found that they were from the same university and same college as us as well. So always interesting to see that.
Anyone? No. Okay, let's move forward. So as I mentioned, today's topic is SRE, and Aditya himself is SRE since many years now. So okay, we got some comments. I think there's some delay. Ritesh is currently in third year of engineering in electronics and communication. Hariharan is working as SRE at Nokia. Bangalore, nice, good to hear. I think some folks from Nokia used to attend our Kubernetes Bangalore meetup. I remember Ritesh. Ritesh is from same university as of me and Aditya. Hello, Ritesh. Nice. Okay, so as I was mentioning that Aditya is SRE since few years, and yeah, so today I have less experience with SRE stuff, so I'll ask questions and Aditya will answer, and vice versa. We'll
Let's see how
discuss.
it goes.
Let's see how it goes. Yeah. Okay. So the very first thing is, like, whether you are new to the stream and whoever it is, very first thing is, what is site reliability? What is SRE, right? Now, the stream title does show the full form of it, which is Site Reliability Engineering. But Aditya, what do you think? What site reliability engineering based on your experience?
Yeah, that's the first question, right? Like someone sees that acronym and goes like, "Hey, what is this site? Like, what is the site? What is reliability engineering, and so on, right?" So, Site reliability engineering is a concept or an implementation of what we discussed in the last episode. So if you haven't looked at the last episode yet, please go watch it as well after this one, of course. But site reliability engineering is an implementation of DevOps, right? So I'm just going to expand the acronym first. It means SRE is Site Reliability Engineering. The site here is Google's data centers, right? SRE is a concept that was introduced by Google, and they call each data center location a site. And reliability engineering is self-explanatory, right? So we all use Google, or maybe use some other search engine, but you know that when you need to search something, you need it to be reliable, right? Like sometimes I personally check my internet by going to google.com, right? I don't check is my internet up or down. I go to google.com. If it works, then I know that, hey, like the internet is working for me. So which goes to say how reliable google.com is, and the concepts that Google uses to make google.com so reliable, they took it out and they said, let's publish it so that other people can use these concepts to implement more reliable web services. And that is called site reliability engineering. They wrote a bunch of books on it, and the industry has adopted it quite widely now. And yeah, that's where it starts.
Nice. The word reliable is quite important here, right? Because I was also reading about it, like what quantify as a reliability, and one of the interesting example I came across, which anyone can relate to, is like Amazon. So Amazon has, are just checking the facts. They has a 18 orders per second, right? 18 orders. Like how reliable their website is, like as you mentioned Google, but just yet another example, right? So yeah, that's cool. Now now that we have set up the stage, okay, this is the SRE, but what was the focus, that like why Google started, like there must be a sysadmin team, there must be a DevOps team, but why they thought, like there should be a new team called SRE and they should do these things, and like what were
Yeah.
the key things you uh, think?
Yeah. So again, organizational structures, right? Every company implements it differently. So it may be so that your organization was on a similar journey. They were trying to provide agility. They were trying to scale the systems. One of the things that specifically happened with Google was that Google runs at a scale that no one else did, right? So their systems needed to be scalable. They were growing very rapidly, and they wanted it to be agile and scalable in terms of people and technology, right? So what happened there was they discovered one of the fundamental premises of SRE and how it differentiates itself from sysadmins or operations is that you take software engineers and you put them to do operations, right? So you treat operations, as opposed to treating it as operations, you treat it as a software problem, right? So you build systems and tooling that allows you to grow very quickly because you took away that abstraction of operations, you automated it, and now you can grow non-linearly with the scale of your system. So I think that was one of the key things. So Google's growth, Google's customer demand, and like the way they were set up for agility, and they wanted to innovate very quickly. So they came up with this model, right? I'm not necessarily saying that this is the only model that can allow you to do so, but this was what they came up with.
Yeah, right. And that's the model they came up with, and many companies try to use the similar model, but some companies does have their own model of SRE as well, right? Now,
Yeah,
one key thing you mentioned here was like you take a software, like you consider infrastructure as a software and then solve the problems, right? And so that goes to a point which we discuss in the DevOps as well, right? Like should I do I need to know the programming if I am into DevOps or if I'm into SRE? But I think in the SRE space the answer is pretty much yes. You need to know the programming because you're going to solve these infrastructure problems by your programming approach, right?
absolutely. So in the SRE space, I do believe that this is more software engineering focused. There needs to be a certain balance between your software development skills and operation skills. I know this has become a buzzword, but you sort of need to be T-shaped in terms of your skill sets when you're in the SRE space. You need to know software engineering, you need to know operations as well. And because you're automating software, right, like you need to know some sort of programming, right? So like instead of just consuming tools, which is many companies wouldn't have the liberty because the space is so fast growing to just consume a tool. You need to be able to write a tool if needed. So that requires some sort of programming or scripting specifically for SRE so that you can like make software that operates your software, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
what's your experience though? Like you are also in a similar domain. We can talk about bit more about that in a future episode. But like, can you give us a hint of how that's different from what you work on, which is another implementation of DevOps? I would say platform engineering.
Yeah.
How would you compare it
So
to?
compared to the DevOps and like the SRE you mentioned, the platform engineering space is pretty similar. And again, as you said, in upcoming episode, we'll focus more on the platform engineering aspect as well. But to give your answer in short, it's pretty much similar. But like there is one pillar in DevOps, which is you speeden the release cycle, like as early as possible you deploy something to production. In SRE you talked about reliability. In platform engineering there is one more aspect, which is a platform. So you consider your infrastructure as a platform, and your developers act as a customer to you, and you serve to your customer, right, as a platform. So it's a little bit of a different mindset to solve the similar problem, where we focus on building the platform to make it more reliable, to make it more robust, and all these stuff. uh, so yeah, that's more about the platform engineering, I would say.
I,
uh,
I got to
yeah.
jump in and say that I had a great discussion with Andrew, who is one of my team members, and the way he explained it, I loved it. So thank you, Andrew, for that. And he said that when Google implemented SRE, they already had the platform,
Yeah.
right? So they already had Borg, they already had Borgmon, they already had like all of these fundamentals cleared up. What's happening is a bunch of people are trying to, and that's why Google released another book, right? So they started with the Google SRE book, which was more like, hey, here's the philosophy, here's what we use, and then release the implementing SRE book, because a lot of companies came up with that demand and said, hey, like you published these philosophies, we want to try this out, but we don't know how to try it. So they were like, here's a book. But a lot of companies still don't have that fundamental platform. And if you say Kubernetes is that platform, Kubernetes is a workload orchestration engine, right? Like you can run workloads on it, but in terms of a platform to actually develop and lifecycle software and services, you need a lot of other stuff. You need CI/CD, you need observability, you need a bunch of other things, and a lot of people were repeating that. So I think that's how like this concept of a platform engineer came up, where it's like, oh, we want to do SRE, but we don't have the actual platform that you can do SRE on top of. So you need a platform team now to create that platform. And platform engineering and SRE can be complementary in that sense, that you can have a platform engineering team and you can have an SRE team that's specifically responsible for services, which is
Yeah.
the way I see it.
Yeah, definitely. And like as you said, like the platform engineering will enable SRE team to look after the reliability aspect of the whole infrastructure. For example, like we'll see few terms in some time, but things like monitoring, things like logging, all these things are part of a platform, which are taken care by this platform team, right? Now some companies will say that okay, that's the DevOps team for us. Some company will say that's the SRE for us. Some will say platform engineering, but that's what platform is, which enables the DevOps as well as the SRE, right? And Aditya mentioned the SRE books by Google. They are free. I linked them into the chat as well. So you can go ahead and read more about the SRE as well. There are, I think, 3 books available on the website. So that's pretty cool. So meanwhile, we had a comment slash question from Ritesh, which is how different is SRE from DevOps? So I'll give my opinion, then Aditya, you can tell yours. So in my opinion, whatever we discussed in the last stream, DevOps is more about, bridging the gaps between the dev team and the ops team, and fast make the release cycle fast. For example, as we discussed, if you are releasing once a month, if you are releasing twice a month, in opposed to that now you are releasing 100 times a day, 200 times a day, that's DevOps for me. Like you are making things fast, but you are not making it reliable, you are just making it fast, but we have to ensure that the things are fast, sorry, reliable. Like I gave one example of Amazon. Right now Amazon has achieved the DevOps, right? They have such a great speed of releasing the functionality. With that, now what they can do is they have achieved a six scale where they have 18 orders per second, right? That's a massive. Like even if you consider $10 per order, they are making how much, like $180 per second, just an example, right? Now what if that system goes down for 2 seconds? What happens? There's a loss of $360, right? The straightaway loss. Now how to make it reliable, how to make it reliable that it doesn't go down that often, right? So that's what reliability for me is, and that's what SRE is. So, and I look at the difference between DevOps and SRE in that way. So yeah, what do you think, Aditya?
I have a slightly different viewpoint on this, Suraj. So,
Hmm.
what I like to think of it as DevOps is a philosophy. DevOps is a way of measurement. DevOps is sort of an ideal state where it's like, hey, this should be this way and this should be this way, right? But it's like, in the end, it's a set of guidelines and principles, right? It doesn't tell you how to do it, it tells you more like what you want to achieve, what are the principles. SRE and platform engineering and other Aditya's organizational methodology, right? Like something new that comes up. These are all implementations which are trying to get there, right? So if we say DevOps is like a set of guidelines and measurements, and SRE implements a way of executing, a way of organizing yourselves to, and like a set of core principles to achieve DevOps. That's what I would say SRE is, right? And one good way to think about it is, say, look at the Dora metrics, right? Look at the what you said, number of deploys, time to merge to master, and like get to the production system. Look at all of those, and then evaluate when you're doing an organizational change. I know a lot of organizations right now are trying to adopt SRE and platform engineering. They're trying to drink the latest Kool-Aid, right? Like, hey, next thing is platform engineering. Let's go do that. So it's like, think about what's the end goal. The end goal is to achieve some sort of DevOps maturity, and SRE platform, all of these, look at them as ways of organizing and then measure them based on the Dora maturity that you have, right? So try SRE and see if it works for you. For many organizations, SRE won't make sense, right? Like if you have one customer and you are like not expecting that to grow like exponentially, like maybe an SRE, full blown SRE team is overkill for you. Maybe you're just a startup, right? So think of those DevOps maturity criteria and look at what your organization actually needs and try to map that together. So that's the way I would say DevOps and SRE are complementary. SRE is an implementation, DevOps is a set of principles.
Yeah. Exactly. So I put a link in the comment about this from the same Google SRE website, and that article says how SRE relates to DevOps. I would highly recommend, Ritesh, go through the doc and you will see it's not different. There will be a similarity as well, but the very interesting thing is the first statement of the blog, which says class SRE implement interface DevOps, right? So as Aditya mentioned, exactly the same thing, that there are some set of principles and this SRE implements those as well, right? So yeah, that's quite interesting, and there are a couple of things in that blog as well. For example, accidents are normal. Now these things we'll discuss, but there are few more things over there which are quite interesting. So that was more about the difference. Again, thanks Ritesh for the question. If you have any more question, feel free to put in the chat. Right. So now we discuss about the differences and like little bit of introduction to SRE. Now Aditya, like what how was your experience as a SRE, like right from the internship to now you are a SRE manager? Like how was your journey? What were your some key highlights?
It's been a pretty interesting journey, I must say. I've been working with SRE for 6 years now, and when I started my internship, we were just figuring out the first service, or like first public SaaS, or arguably not the first, but like one of the major public SaaS for Red Hat, right? Like we were working on it together with Suraj. So the idea there was that we didn't have this platform again. So a lot of went into building this platform, right? Building foundational monitoring. I know I was working on figuring out monitoring for SaaS on Kubernetes. So started with toolings, right? Like I'm not going to mention tooling because I think people often attach tooling to the concept, and I don't want to do that, right? So I was working on some tooling. I did a major migration, like from one tool to another popular tool. Tools are going to change over time, right? So we were trying to build out that platform. Over time, we created a solid platform for running our services, and we were also balancing that. And this is what many organizations will have to do, right? One of my experiences has been that if you unless you are a major organization which has its platform figured out completely, you will have to develop it as you go, right? So you will have to work on the platform, and you will have to split that time between working on the platform and working on the reliability of the service. So as our services portfolio grew, like we started from one service, then at some point we grew to over 100 services. I think the team runs about 150 services now. We have a centralized SRE team at Red Hat. So more than 150 services on while still developing the platform that is used to back these services, right? So that's been the journey. At some point we started pivoting to I changed tracks. I went into people leadership. Now my what my teams do is we write Kubernetes operators to operate services, right? And providing that platform for Kubernetes operators. So it has been all along a mix between developing the service and making the service developing a platform for the service and making the services more reliable. That's been the like overall 6 years, and it includes a lot of topics, right? So observability, CI/CD, automation, security, touching on quality as well, compliance if you're at an enterprise. All of these things, reliability is a very very vast topic, and all of these things you're going to have to need to touch on. So we are sort of like the central point, like which are bringing together a bunch of these teams saying, hey, is this like compliant? Like how do you monitor for this? Is this secure, right? And like what's your system design? Like how do you change it? So it's been a very interesting journey, and I would say for a lot of people that are just starting out and that are just trying to implement SRE, you are going to have to put on multiple hats. That's what I like about this role, is you get to put on multiple hats. There's a lot of work to do, and you can pick in, like as long as your company is structured that way, right? Like as long as you have the choice, you can pick what you want to work on and go in depth. Like I specifically was working a lot on observability, as well as CI/CD. So you can pick some topics and like you can become the domain expert in that before you move on to the next one, right? So you don't have to like get overwhelmed with like 50 topics, because this is a vast space. So that's been my journey so far. Right now, the team is pretty big, and we are building a platform for running Kubernetes operators on OpenShift, which is our Kubernetes distribution at Red Hat. So a lot of Golang, a lot of cloud native tools, a lot of Kubernetes, and so on. But these are tools, right? And they may change over time. So maybe ask me again in 5 years, and we'll see what we are still using. What about you, Suraj? What's been sort of your journey about this SRE thing? And I know you're in platform, but I find it very similar because, as I said, you'll have to split time between those anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, before we jump into my experience, Ritesh asked a nice question. What does a SRE engineer do in his day-to-day life, right? And I want you to answer in a clickbait type of video, like, day in a life of SRE.
Clickbait video. I wake up, I have some coffee. It's like, imagine that video, right? Like, I'm waking up, I'm having my beautiful coffee. But generally, what SREs aim to do, right? I'm going to say what they aim to do and what they actually get done. So, what the goal of an SRE engineer is depends on the organization, right? So, if your organization is facing a lot of operational toil, maybe your SREs will do a lot of operations, right? Right now, my team's goal, for example, is 70% development, 30% operations, right? So when I say 70% development, that development work goes towards building that platform, because we have a bunch of managed services. What we are doing is we are building out a platform that enables these Kubernetes operators to easily plug and play into the OpenShift ecosystem, right? So we have a lot of development work to do. We follow, like, loosely follow Scrum with Agile, and we have an entire backlog of development items. So SRE, most of the time, as long as they are not on call, is like a regular software engineer developing automation, right? But then there's the other aspect of it, which is operations. So many times there are incidents and errors, and mistakes are inevitable, so they are going to happen. So 30% of time is dedicated to operations, where you get an alert, you go run the SOP, or like you tune the SOPs, you investigate why you needed an SOP in the first place, you go and tune these alerts, you observe the system, you make the service better, like all of that stuff, right? So what we are, I think ideally that's the workflow, where you're developing some stuff, you have some operations, ideally your software takes care of it, right? If you're developing specifically about Kubernetes operators, maybe your operators should actually operate and run that SOP, or run that healing, automatic healing for your service. But if it doesn't happen, then a lot of time goes into like investigation and making the services better, which is the reliability aspect of it, right? So there's the
Right.
platform, there's the reliability, and you will weigh these things over time differently based on where your organization is. Right now, as you can see, we are heavily investing into the platform side, where we are trying to build out that platform. But over time, maybe it will be like, okay, now we have a platform, now we are going to invest more into reliability, and we are going to specifically pick some services which we are going to focus a lot of time on and making them more reliable. We have the just to add, we have the liberty, because we have decently sized teams, and the engineering teams are well educated on the reliability aspect of it. So the engineering teams take care of a lot of reliability as well, right? So that's sort of a part of DevOps transformation, where everybody, if everybody cares about the SLO, if everybody cares about reliability, then it becomes part of the culture, and there's no like one reliability team, because everybody cares about reliability and customer experience to begin with. So I hope that answers the question. Day to day, 70% development, 30% operations, and then there's some, right? Then there's some random days where things are happening.
Okay, so we'll cover the Ritesh question, Ritesh, your question in some time now. We have these terminologies planned in our outline as well. Before that, I'll answer Aditya your question, like how SRE fits into my workflow of being a platform engineer. So it's been an interesting journey. When when I started as a platform engineer, my team was more focused on making the platform a bit resilient. Like, uh, when I say platform, that means the Kubernetes as a platform to deploy containers. Then other platforms could be a CI/CD platform. One more platform could be a data platform, where data pipelines run. Then few other platforms. So various platforms, we were looking after them, but at the same time, indirectly, we were implementing SRE principles. For example, uh, if you are running Kubernetes, there will be a ingress controller, right, which exposes your service. So we had a dashboard where we were measuring the all these SLIs and SLOs of the ingress, and looking after the how was the downtime, what are the things what we should look after, how we can improve. So not directly but indirectly, we were implementing those SRE principles, and we again, as an engineer, similar to what you said, we also have a lot of development scope, because we also write our own tools, we extend the existing tooling, and if needed we write like complete set of a software from scratch as well. So pretty similar, but I would say the focus is more on platform resiliency rather than the reliability. And later on what happened was, because of that, we had a sub team, we formed a other sub team, SRE, which focused solely on the reliability aspect of it. But I would say definitely 30-40% of the time, uh, I can see that indirectly we are leveraging these principles in the day-to-day work as well. So yeah, that's more about it. So one thing now I want to ask Aditya is, like, now you shared your experience as a SRE engineer in your early life, but now that you are an SRE manager, I'd like to ask, like, as a manager, what do you look into the candidate as a, SRE candidate? Like, for example, if you are taking an interview, like, what skill set you look for? uh, yeah, tell me more.
Yeah, I always look for nice people to work with and smart people, people who are smarter than me. But generally, I would say that there's a few like cultural pieces, right? Like foundational pieces. Like you need to be very respectful to people. You need to be good at communications. You need to understand the breadth of the system as well as the depth sometimes, right? So these are some of the cues that I look for when I speak to a candidate. And usually what I'm doing nowadays is a manager round, or like right for red hat interview is what they call it, which is it's good, not going to feel like an interview, right? If it feels like an interview, I have done my job wrong. So it's like we end up in a call together and I ask you like, how's your journey been, and like, oh, I've already gone through your resume. What I'm going to look for as a candidate, let's say you were interviewing with us, right? So what I'm going to look for is what's your outlook on software, right? How do you see software being developed? What's your perspective on the life cycle of the software? Are you a person who wants to just sit down and talk to no one and like sit down and just write code, or are you a person who wants to like go around and help people build their software, right? Like what's your preference in that sense? Then like what are some of the worked examples you have, not so much applicable for a fresh grad but definitely for an experienced engineer? What are some of the things that motivate you to go into SRE if you're not already an SRE, right? A lot of people are now switching from a software engineering background or an operations background to SRE, right? And their tracks look different. I've seen like software engineers go to SRE and not like to do operations at all, right? And then some operations engineers go into SRE because their organization did a reorg and now they are in SRE, and now they're still doing operations but calling it SRE, right? So I just try to establish usually is, do you really understand what the essence of SRE is, right? Do you really understand this is an operations focused role that is implemented using software and programming? So like that for me is fundamental in an SRE candidate, is their understanding of what SRE is, right? Like if you're applying for a role, you better have done some research on like what that is, why you want to specifically work on this role at this company, and like do you have any insight? There's a lot of public knowledge, for example, on how each of the company implements SRE, right? Everybody has their own way. Red Hat has their own way, Google has their own way, right? There's a bunch of principles there, but every company, because of organizational constraints and context and like the product portfolio and all of that, they implement SRE in a different sense. So like, have you done some research on how this specific company is implementing SRE, right? And usually you can find them on the engineering blog. You can find them, like some people like us are talking about it on YouTube. You just search for it and you will find it. In terms of skill sets, what I look for is some kind of programming background, right? And if not, if they don't have a programming background, better to have like a strong operations background and some exposure to programming, right? The ideal candidate is already an SRE, right? But then we are not talking of like the SRE job market is pretty hot, and What we want is people who are motivated into the role. They understand this role, they have some background in operations or some background in software, and want to lean towards the other direction and learn and show some motivation, show some pre-work being done to actually pivot to the other side as well, or lean towards the other side. So someone like, for example, software engineer, pure software engineer, let's say working on Java, and then suddenly takes a CKA course. I think that's a good point, which shows me, hey, this person is interested somewhat in operations, somewhat in like Kubernetes, and if they can explain their reasoning of why they took that course, then that's a good indicator for me. So these are some of the high level things that I look for, and of course, the interview process is pretty elaborate. So we have some separate sections that are looking specifically into the technical skills, but these are the high level things that I look for in the manager screen nowadays. I hope
Okay.
that helps.
Yeah, that helps. And just in addition to that, when someone starts as an intern, what are the expectations? Is it the same or like little bit different?
So my view on it is, I'm going to specifically say this is my view on it, and I would love to hear what you think as well, right? So I never treat interns as, hey, this is an intern, they are going to get lesser work. I want interns to get the full experience, and I want it to be very meritocratic, right? So what I try to do is, of course, the intern is not going to have like a vast level of experience, or like hasn't worked in an industry before, presumably, or maybe they have in some other internship. But if they have some experience, I would love to see what they contributed, like how motivated they are. I think motivation plays a huge role. We have had recently a very successful intern, Ankit, if you're watching this. So he's extremely motivated. For example, that's a good example of an intern where you're extremely motivated, you're doing all the pre-work, you're putting in the work, you're making those connections. Internships are a learning experience. That's what I always say. You go into the company, you understand how the company works, you make those connections, you deliver value, and then hopefully like you'll return for a full-time position, right? Like, and what I look for usually is the signal saying the team is already saying, hey, this person is doing fantastic, right? So like that's after hiring. How do you determine if a person is gonna perform well in an interview as an intern? So we have an intern hiring process, which is a bit different from like full-time engineer hiring process. It's core competencies, right? Computer science fundamentals. How well do you know the fundamentals of computer science? How well do you know what role you're applying for? A lot of interns, for a lot of new grads I see, are very confused, right? Like they're like, I have machine learning, I have Java development, and I have like Linux kernel module development, right? Like, and then you go, okay, so what are you actually trying to do, right? Are you trying to be a machine learning engineer? Are you trying to be a Java engineer? Like, what is your pathway? So having that clarity is very helpful. So that's what I would look for in an intern, or that's the recommendation I would give for anyone who's watching, who's willing to apply for an internship. Know what your track sort of looks like. I know it's very difficult to know far out in the future what you want to do, but if you have done like 3 4 years of university, or even if you're self studying, you should have a sense of what good looks for you. What is it that you enjoy doing? Because in the end, I want you to work on something that you enjoy doing. I don't want you to work on SRE just because it's the new cool thing. I want you to work on SRE because you genuinely find that it's an interesting domain to work in, and are passionate about it. So show that passion, and I think that good things will come. So what is your take on it, Suraj? That's the way I evaluate interns, but I know you are also involved in like hiring activities and so on as a senior engineer now. So what's your take on interns?
So I think my take is like the very first thing is like I would say not sticking to any technology. Like for example, there's like people usually on various forum I see people ask questions like, okay, I know Kubernetes, can I be DevOps, or like, can I be SRE? No, like don't stick to technology. Like for example, when I was a DevOps intern, like, okay, I didn't know what Kubernetes is, I didn't know what other thing is, I knew only few technologies and language, and only one thing I knew was, okay, here's the thing, I want to write code also, and I want to do some admin bits also. Now I don't know whether it's called DevOps or SRE. I don't know what it is. I want this thing. I know little bit of programming. I want to be good at it. I know little bit of admin stuff. I want to be good at it, right? So having that, not even like clearer vision, but some sort of idea, right? Like what you want to do, and some sort of like motivation to do these things, right? So these are the basic things I would say, because like other thing doesn't matter, like whether you know Docker or whether you know Kubernetes or not, it doesn't matter. When you are onboarded, you can learn it, right? Like no company says you have to be expert in it, right? You onboard, you learn, but the, as you said, the motivation is really important. uh,
Yeah, and I'm gonna add that the only truth is that the technology will change over time, and you're gonna be required to learn new technologies as you go, right? Hopefully, you're in a fast-growing company. If you're not, otherwise, it's anyway beneficial to adopt to new developments in the technology space. So it's very likely that, for example, when we started in university, and when Suraj was already in at Red Hat, I was learning Docker, right? Docker was the thing. But then a bunch of other container runtime showed up, right? And then a bunch of container tooling showed up, and then Kubernetes showed up. We were still doing OpenStack back then. Then Kubernetes showed up, so we adopted Kubernetes, and then we built on top of Kubernetes. And it's very likely that as you go into an organization, they will have their own tooling, right, built on top of Kubernetes or built on top of whatever cloud provider or even like bare metal providers. Everybody will have tooling to solve the problem, and you are gonna be required to learn that tooling to be successful at your job. So don't attach yourself to, hey, I'm like a this I'm like this tooling person, I'm only going to do this, I'm not going to do anything else. It will work, right? I'm not saying that you can't be a specific toolings domain specific expert. Like for example, if your entire thing is about Terraform and you want to make your life about Terraform, there are ways to succeed with that, right? So I'm not saying that, hey, don't be specifically focused on one tooling. But if you want to cast sort of a broad net and you want to expand your scope of opportunity, I think it's generally better to like focus on the foundation and say, foundationally, I am solid, and then I will pick up any tool that comes my way. For example, for me, at some point we were running Python, Java, Ruby. I think like a bunch of Golang, a bunch of programming languages, and like someone came in with a new language. You want to contain that a bit, but you don't have much control over it, right? So if you're doing reliability engineering for these applications, you will learn over time what a Java application looks like, even if you're not a Java person. I don't consider myself a Java person, but there are times where you like need to look at a Java application, Java code, and you need to be a polyglot in that sense that if I need to understand Java code, I will rapidly learn what like the basics of Java are, and I will go troubleshoot that application. So that's one outlook. I think it's a very helpful perspective that Suraj gave here, which is don't be attached to a technology or don't be attached to a tool chain because it's going to change over time.
yeah. And I think our stream is like, you have to upskill every day to yourself. And in my experience, like when I started, I used Puppet and Ansible and Python, right? But over the period of time, I started using Terraform, I started using Python, Golang, Ruby, right? And at some point I did write Perl script as well. So it keeps changing. And like one of my mentor used to say this thing, right? Like whether you use Python or whether you use C++, there will be a for loop, right? Like now the syntax will be different, but if you know the idea of for loop, how it works, how to use it, then it becomes easy. So again, at the same point, like we don't need to stick to a technology. If we know the concepts, we'll do good.
Yeah, be good
So
at programming. Don't be good at a specific language of programming, right? Be good at
yeah,
programming in general, and I think it's going to be helpful. In same way, be good at reliability, be good at observability, and then tooling will change over time.
yeah, right. Cool. So I think we discussed more about like what SRE is, what's the difference between SRE and DevOps. We looked at SRE as a career as well, based on your experience, like as an engineer, as a manager. Now I think I'd like to go little bit in depth of SRE and like discuss few of the terminologies that we have, and the similar question Ritesh asked as well, which is, oh, what is SLA, SLO, and SLI in SRE? So I think let's go one by one. We'll start with SLA, I guess, or is that okay, Aditya?
We can take a different approach if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. So I this is one of my favorite topics because I was pretty deep in observability stuff. Right. So SLA, SLI, and SLO. So service level agreements, service level objectives, and service level indicators. Take a step back. Don't go into these terms yet. Think about why we are doing SRE. Right? The reason we are doing SRE, the reason we are doing any of this, the reason, like the ultimate reason is that we have a company. The company offers a service, right? Or company offers some kind of service. Maybe it's a web service, maybe it's a consulting service, maybe it's some kind of whatever, right? Your company offers something. In the end, you're going to grow if your customers appreciate what you're doing, right? If you're a pizza delivery service and you're delivering pizzas in 5 hours, no one's going to like your cold pizzas, right? In the end, customer experience is very important. So in a services world, when I say services, it's now web services. What Google found out is that customer experience can be mapped to metrics, right? Or can be mapped to some indicators of customer experience. And this customer experience, and in an aggregate over the millions and billions of customers that your service has, presumably, or even like tens or thousands or whatever your service has, you need to look at the aggregate experience of the customers and eliminate outliers. So what you want to do is say, if my service is being used by 100 customers, how many of them are happy, right? Every once in a while, if you have 100 customers, not at the 100 customer scale, maybe like if you have tens of thousands of customers, if one of them faces a service issue, it's probably okay, right? There will always be outliers. So what Google did was introduce this concept of a service level indicator. So what is a service level indicator? If you're using a service, what is it that the customer sees as a happy path? What is it that the customer sees as success? What does good look like for your service? For example, if you're running a pizza store, right? Does your pizza get delivered in like 1 hour? Does it I believe my camera is again heating up. I need to see what's going on. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can.
Perfect. So if you're running a pizza store, you want your latency to be low. Latency is the time that it takes for you to serve that pizza, right? So there's like you identify where's the pizza latency coming from. Are the people who are creating the pizza working slow? Do they have the ingredients that they need? Is the delivery slow, right? That helps you identify bottlenecks. But what is important is that you measure this over time. So for example, if you were recording, someone orders the pizza, how much time does it take from their order to the pizza getting delivered to them, right? And then you that is your service level indicator. Your indicator is a measurement of customer experience. So service level indicators are directly tied to customer experience. Service level objective is what you say. So what we want to do is under promise and over deliver, right? So what we want to say is, hey, you know what, your pizza is going to show up in 30 minutes, but it's actually, we know inside that it should actually be done in 20 minutes based on the processes that we have in place, right? So your service level agreement is something like you get your pizza for free if you don't deliver it in 30 minutes, right? So that's an agreement that you sign with the customer, and your indicator for that is the timing, right? So your indicator is how much time does it take. Your agreement is that we promise you if you don't get it in 30 minutes, we will give it for free. And objective is internally we want to get it done in 20 minutes, so that we set 30 minutes and then we deliver it in 20 minutes, and then the customer is like, wow, this is great because you said 30 minutes, you got it in 20 minutes, fantastic, right? So service level objectives are more optimistic or are more conservative than service level agreements usually, because you want to aim higher than what you promise the customer. And then that difference between what you aim for and what you actually promise the customer is called the error budget, right? So like
Yeah.
how, or no, the actual availability and the what the contract you have with the customer is called the error budget. So you can have like different error budgets there. So this way, it's like there's three terms: service level indicators, service level objectives, and service level agreements that are used to encompass and observe your software or service and then say, did we succeed or did we not succeed? And this is usually implemented through some monitoring observability toolchain.
Yeah. So you mentioned the, so let's keep the pizza shop as a story to go forward, right? So you mentioned the SLI, that means some sort of indicators. Now there can be a many indicators, right, based on the, let's say in our case, the pizza shop. So it can be like how many pizzas we are making in an hour, right, or how many orders that are coming through, right? So basically some sort of metrics are indicator, right? uh,
Yeah.
can you elaborate a bit?
Absolutely. So imagine that your pizza store, let's say Suraj's pizza store, becomes very successful, right? So just like any distributed system, what's going to happen is over time, your pizza store is going to see a lot of demand, and based on that demand, you will have to scale, right? So let's say you're a small pizza store, you have one person making the pizza, and you suddenly get 100 requests. Then your pizza latency is going to suffer. For example, if Suraj is making the pizza and like delivering it, that is like a single threaded application, right? You take the pizza request, you make the pizza, you deliver it, you go on to the next pizza. What you now need to start looking at is the reliability and like the indicator, and you're saying, oh, it takes Suraj on an average to make on an average 3 hours to deliver a pizza because he's doing it single threaded. Let's add more people, right? So you do like a multi people pizza store operation. Now that you have now two people, or you separate out delivery from the pizza making, right? So you had a single person doing pizza making and pizza delivery. Now you do one person or two people on the delivery, two people on the pizza creation team. And so that's how you scale web services as well. It's like it's very similar to a pizza store. Surprisingly, you look at the indicator, you look at the customer experience, and then you find out the bottlenecks, and you say, oh, pizza delivery is the longest time, so we need more delivery people than the pizza makers, because pizza makers can make it quickly, but having a single person go around the city and deliver it is actually the highest latency operation in our pizza delivery store. So that's how you can structure your web services as well. That's how microservices can scale independently of each other, and that's how you logically separate services. And in order to measure that, you need to have some good service level indicators, right? So as I said, service level indicators need to map to customer experience, but then you can have some internal SLIs as well, which are mapped to not SLAs but to your SLOs, right? So each pizza store, for example, if you had 5 pizza stores and now you're running a pizza business with multiple stores, you need to say what is the output of this pizza store, right? And if you given the same number of people, you should ideally have around the same number of pizzas being made per hour, right? So pizzas per hour being created can be one of your service level indicators. And if like the pizza per hour drops down, you can say, hey, so what's the issue, what's the challenges, what are the things that we need to support this pizza store to actually make more pizzas.
Right. So if I understand correctly, and is it safe to say that to have SLA and SLO in place, we need to have SLIs, right? Like if there are no indicators, like we cannot do SLO or SLA, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You need to
Okay.
have
So
SLIs in place because you're going to use those SLIs to establish SLOs and SLAs.
yeah. And to have SLIs in place, we need to have a proper monitoring system which gathers the metrics from the system and show it in the some form of metrics, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So that's
And
commonly how it's implemented, right? Like that's the recommended way of implementing it. But maybe like if you are thinking of it in general terms, what you need is some kind of observability. Maybe it's metrics, maybe it's spreadsheet, maybe it's like a list. Metrics are an efficient way to implement that because then you can programmatically access them and visualize them, and so on.
yeah, right.
But
Uh,
just generally saying as a manager as well, SLAs are like objectives and key results, right? Or SLOs are like objectives and key results. You have measurements, and then you have results. right? So that's
right,
also how you deal with people, in the sense that you set some objectives, you look at the measurements, and you say, so did you meet expectations, or did you not meet expectations, or did you exceed expectations, right? So SLAs and SLOs you can implement in real life as well, and you can have indicators like how many books did I read this month, right? My objective is this, my commitment to someone, to my friend who I'm accountable with, is this, and so on.
right,
So
yeah.
you can
And
implement it in real life as well. It's very much a philosophy.
yeah, and I think more realistic example could be like yesterday was 31st of December, and all these food delivery networks were quite busy, and they were like publishing some indicators on the Twitter as well. Like for example, I remember Swiggy and Zomato posting like, we are like giving like 100 biryanis per minute or something like that, like a not the exact number but
Yeah.
something like that. Now that's the indicator for them, right? Like we are having these many requests per second, per hour, and we are delivering this much thing, right? So
Yeah.
that's the indicator, basically some number,
Yeah,
right?
I can give you a real life example here. For example, the SLO of my camera is, it needs to have a good uptime, right? And we are looking at a 1 hour period here right now. So what's happening right now, just if someone's wondering, and this is an incident that we are now going to need to troubleshoot, is the camera fails about 45 minutes in, right? So what's happening is that as we are doing the stream, what I have is a Fujifilm X-T4 mounted to my like connected to my laptop. What happens is, because the camera keeps running and the camera is like streaming its output to the laptop in 4K, and then the laptop processes it and shows it to you on stream, the camera heats up, right? And this is also many times what happens with services, and this is what happens with pizza stores as well, where people will get tired, right? Like if you're making a lot of pizzas and you don't rotate the people who are making those pizzas, they're going to get tired, their efficiency is going to reduce. Same for CPUs. If you put a lot of processing and you're running the CPUs at 90%, it's going to heat up and it's going to throttle itself. So these are some of the very in-depth things that you need to start looking at when you're
Yeah.
looking at reliability as a concept for a service. Nowadays it's like this there's this paper called free lunch, where you get a lot of computing, you get a lot of memory, and like in the cloud it's easy to just add a node. But let's say you had one camera, right? I have one camera right now, and what I'm doing is every time it goes off, I'm going to turn it off and turn it on again. It's going to give it enough time to somehow cool down or like reset its function. It's like Kubernetes operators. You're turning it off and turning it off on. But what I would look at here, my service level objective for this is 100% uptime. Really, I want this camera to work. My service level indicator is it up or is it down, right? It's like a uptime indicator. And some other indicators I can have, like some other metrics I can have, is what is the temperature of the camera, because I know right now that it's turning off because it's heating up, right? If it heats up to a certain limit and it has a threshold, it will be like, hey, it's too hot, I'm going to turn off the camera. So as it happened just now. So what's going to happen is, like, I'm going to look at that and I'm going to find the bottlenecks and I'm going to try to resolve them over time. So yeah, try to apply SLIs, and SLOs to your real life as well. And I think once you get used to it, yeah, you can get out of sleep and start forming SLIs, and SLOs for anything, any service really. It's all about the customer experience.
Right. So once the SLIs is set, I think you mentioned the SLOs as well, which is service level objective, right? Which means, like, if I understand correctly, going back to our pizza stories, like, okay, now we have some sort of metrics for our pizza shop, but now we have to keep some objective. For example, you mentioned we should make pizza within 20 minutes, right? Or uh, other what could be other SLOs you can think of?
So, as I said, and when we break it down by customer experience, right? Like, you can there's this book called Implementing Service Level Objectives by Alex Hidalgo. I quite recommend it. There's a lot of SLOs that you can implement. It's like, is the pizza consistent, right? Like if you ordered a margarita pizza, did you get a margarita pizza, or did I give you a different pizza? right? What is the kind of cheese? So that's the consistency SLO, right? Are the orders accurate? What is the throughput of your pizza store? Like how many pizzas are you creating over time? So these are indicators, of course, and you can set a target. Like 100% of my orders need to be consistent, right? If someone asks for a margarita with extra cheese, I want to give them an extra cheese, and every time I do that, I measure it correctly. So many times, for example, these metrics are hidden in the user experience. Like when you order from Uber or whatever, whenever wherever you order from, you look at the feedback form they give you, right? They're like, "Hey, how was this order?" And then you say it was good, it was bad, and then you say, "Hey, I got the wrong order," right? And in the back end, they are measuring all of that and saying, "Hey, like this restaurant, this is how many orders they had correct, or this is how many orders they had wrong." And if you're getting a lot of orders, a lot of people saying that their order was wrong, then you can reach out to the restaurant and you can say, "You know what, folks, like something's happening, all of your orders are wrong, let's try and improve that." So if you're running a platform that people are using to deliver their service on top, it you can provide additional value by giving these insights to those people, right? So if you're like a pizza store operating software, right? So where multiple pizza businesses, let's say Domino's and Pizza Hut, are using your software, you're like an aggregator of pizza delivery companies, then you can provide these metrics to your customers to let them know what their customers are experiencing. So
Right.
that's one way of like delivering platforms by providing visibility, and that's one way you can provide value.
Yeah. So again, if I understand correctly, like we defined some indicators, some metrics, which are showing us some data. Based on that, we had some objectives, and these objectives were internal, right? Internal to my pizza shop, and it's like a resolution. Like I need to meet these goals, right? These are some goals, and now on top of that, there's this SLA, right? Now SLA, in my opinion, it's like a agreement. It's a service level agreement with direct customer, right? Like you are going to get pizza within 30 minutes. If you're not getting it, I'll give it to you for free, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you remember, there was this thing campaign run in India by Domino's. It's called 30 minutes of free. I
Yeah.
don't know if people are doing it elsewhere, but it's like you order a pizza. As soon as your order is in the system, you'll get the pizza to your door in 30 minutes. If you
Yeah.
don't get it, it's for free. So that's an SLA, right? It's a written agreement usually published in your contract that you sign with the company where you're consuming the web service, or your end user agreements also published on the website. So you will see contractual things like AWS, for example. If you're using AWS and your S3 bucket disappears, or your EBS volume is not available, or if your instances go down, you're going to get credits for that. So it usually is financial things as well, and this is because people are doing things on top of the service that you're providing, right? For example, if you're AWS, people are taking those EC2 instances to write their code and deliver to their customers who with whom they have their own SLAs, right? So I think the composite nature of SLAs and SLOs, we can talk a bit more about that later on, but that's very interesting to me because it's like everything is about SLAs, right? Like you're sitting in your house right now, your electricity provider has an SLA with you saying that you will get electricity 100% of the time or 99% of the time, right? And then there's preventative mechanisms, like maybe you will not notice a blip in the electricity. Maybe my internet, for example, for some reason it keeps restarting every once in a while, right? But as long as you have buffering in your client, maybe you'll see like a small blip. Or yeah, you can work around unreliable systems is what I'm saying, and that's very important when you're delivering a services, to look at the composite SLA and look at the workarounds you have in case one of your dependencies goes down.
Yeah. I think another example of SLA I can think of is like a Amazon Prime, right? Like a 1 day delivery. You are paying them some amount yearly to become a Prime member. In return, they are agreeing that we will deliver you as fast as we can, right?
So is it? I wonder if that's an SLA or if it's an SLO or like whatever. Because do they give you money back if they don't deliver it in
No,
time?
they don't.
So
Yeah.
it's more like an SLO. SLAs are usually with like a financial implication, right? Or some sort of incentive or de-incentive to perform on the company's behalf. So it's more like Amazon is publishing their SLOs that for Prime members we will deliver in this much time, but like if we don't, we are sorry, like we don't control the logistics, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I think one more real example I can think of SLA is like so few months back I moved my house to the like from one area to another, and I moved my broadband as well along with it. And what happened was like they promised me to set up my broadband within like 3 weeks, but they couldn't do it. Right, they took more than 3 weeks, so in return what they did was they gave me a 1 month of broadband free. Right, so I think that counts as SLA.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. So
perfect.
that's a financial implication for them, right? So they were like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we didn't deliver to our service. Here's like a financial incentive to make up for it."
Right, right. So I think we discussed pretty much three important aspects in SRE, which is SLA, SLI, and SLO. There are still many things such as like a error budget or like a incident and automation, all those things. But they are altogether a different topic, right? We'll definitely cover them separately. But one thing before concluding, I'd like to ask is like we talked about SLI, SLO, and SLA, but like who defines them, right? Like one thing, like as an engineer or in a pizza shop, right? Like as a pizza maker, uh, I don't know the other aspect of business, right? So am I capable of defining SLAs?
Yes. So what I would do for a pizza shop, let's say I'm the owner of the pizza shop, right? It is in my best interest that I give good customer service. So the business owner in many organizations, the product owner or the business unit or whoever, like the general manager, whatever you want to call them, right? They are responsible for making sure that there's an SLA, there's an expectation that's set with the customers, right? But as a pizza shop owner, maybe I'm just investing in that pizza shop, right? I don't have much skin in the game, so I'm not an actual pizza expert. So what I would need, in the same way that a pizza business owner would need input from the people who are actually making pizzas and people who are making deliveries, I, as the business owner in a software organization, would need input from the engineers who are working on the software. What is the capability of the software? What is the delivery flow? Where are the bottlenecks of the software? What is it that we can realistically achieve? Because in the end, I could say, hey, you know what? I want to deliver 5,000 pizzas a day, right? And that may not be realistic. So it's a collaborative exercise. There's a workshop freely put out by Google where you can go through this exercise, but I would recommend having a few personas there, right? Having your user experience team, if you have one, having your engineering backend team, having like all of these people come together and do a workshop on what is it that our software can realistically achieve and set these goals based on that, right? Because it's easy to like come out of thin air and say I want 99.99% availability because that's what everybody else is doing. But it's not really realistic if your software isn't set up, and availability and reliability comes at a cost, right? So every single line of uptime that you add has a lot of implications, right? I can already list going from 99.9 to 99.95, and then going from 95 to 99. I can list out what the differences you're going to need in terms of like process and technology and people and bandwidth and so on. So you need to be very considerate of all of that, and you need to like balance that against like how much budget you have. Is this really a requirement? Like if you're running a service that's only used on Sunday morning at 12 o'clock, do you really need it to be up all the time? Those are all the things that you need to consider.
Yeah. Right. I think you mentioned like couple of 99 and all those nines and the uptime. I think again they are like a quite vast and more different topics which we will discuss. So I think is the time to wrap up our today's stream. So we those who joined late, you can watch this stream again on the LinkedIn or YouTube. They are available. We discussed like many aspects of SRE, like what's SRE, what's the difference between SRE and DevOps. We did see like a what to expect as a career option as well. So yeah, I think that's more about it. Again, thank you so much, Aditya, for joining, and thanks everyone for joining as well. Happy New Year, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining, everyone. Have a great new year. And if you would like to see an RCA or root cause analysis on why my camera is misbehaving, do let me know in the comments and I will try to write something up. But
Yeah,
cheers and
definitely.
see you
And
next time.
just one thing before signing off, like our links are in the description. If you have any questions, do reach out to us.
Final thing, I again would like to say that we are looking for feedback on how this is going. So if you like this stream, please do share it with people so that we can justify on continuing to do this. It takes a lot of effort to like sit down here on a Sunday morning. So we would love to do more of these, but would love to have the feedback. So drop a comment, share it on LinkedIn, do whatever, reach out to us in DMs. Our DMs are open, and let us know if it's helpful, right? We don't want to be speaking into the void, and we want to know if it's helpful for you. So let us know. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye. Happy New Year.